So General Goldfein, Major General Harris and I are delighted to be here today at this unveiling of the maquette of Pilots Officer John Magee. Pilots Officer Magee really symbolises the partnership that our three nations have had in our history and have today. He had an American father, a British mother, but joined the Royal Canadian Air Force and flew with the RAF in the latter part of 1940 and into 1941. His famous poem was High Flight, which epitomises much of what we feel as airmen and airwomen back then and today as well. Tragically, he lost his life in a mid-air collision in December of 1941. This maquette, which will then become the memorial, will be to him and will be placed near where he fell during 1941. So I'm delighted that we could be here today to commemorate him and also to celebrate our partnerships which endure through to today.
Yeah, it's absolutely spectacular. A great likeness of someone that we all hold in such high regard, and means so much to all of us. Not only those of us who fly, but everyone who has their fingerprints on an airplane that get airborne, from the maintainers to the fuelers to the weapons loaders. And everyone who ever gets involved in air power knows high flight, and it means so much for us to be able to do that here with our partners, because strategic partnerships are our asymmetric advantage. And so gathering together here as 49 air chiefs to be able to compare notes and talk about the things that we're working on together, couldn't be more untimely and couldn't be more important.
Well, it's 2017 in Canada. It's 150 years of our Confederation. He was an American, fighting in a Canadian uniform in the defense of the UK, and I think he'd be proud to be here today in strategic partnerships. I think his words have galvanized aviators across the world, and I think his legacy goes on, and I think he would be extremely proud looking out at this air show today to have us all here. So it's a great day.
My name's Anthony Dufour. I'm a public sculptor.
And tell me about what this bust is here today.
This is a 1/3 scale bust, which is just part of what's going to be a 9-foot tall sculpture of John Magee.
And who was John Magee?
John Magee was a young American citizen trained in Canada, came to England, was a Spitfire pilot, and he died sadly in a mid-air collision with a young pilot from Cranwell at the age of 19 in 1941. Well, it's partly a sad story, but also an inspiring story of a young man full of hope and idealism, wanting to do his bit. He sadly died before he saw very much combat, and this is obviously something worth commemorating. But there's also the fact that he was a poet, and his poem has become incredibly famous and is known by flyers and astronauts throughout the world. And this is something that has outlived him. And he'll, of course, become better known with a 9-foot sculpture of himself to people doing tours of aerodromes in Lincolnshire. And I think this will be a nice thing. It'll give something extra to the people of Lincolnshire as well, I hope.
Absolutely, there is a lot of detail, isn't there?
I can just slowly turn it if you like.
My name is Richard Overton and I come from Wellingore in Lincolnshire.
And what are you here today to do at the Royal International Air Tattoo?
Well, we're delighted to have been invited because we've been doing a local project to honour John Gillespie Magee. And so we're coming here today to unveil the first bust of John Magee.
So,
Started about 14 years ago on the inspiration of John Magee at Wellingore Aerodrome. There is nothing to show John Magee in Wellingore. He was buried at Scopwick, but everything is related to Wellingore Hall and Wellingore Airfield. So the actual project started in 2014, where a group of us got together to start to put together an idea of a memorial of some description for John Magee. My connection is that I actually live on Wellingore Airfield, which is where John took off on December the 11th, 1941. And I actually live at Wellingore Hall, which is where 412 Canadian Squadron were based.
Oh, I have slipped the surly bonds of earth and danced the skies on laughter-silvered wings. Sunward I've climbed and joined the tumbling mirth of sun-split clouds and done 100 things you have not dreamed of. Wheeled and soared and swung, high in the sunlit silence, hovering there, I've chased the shouting wind along and flung my eager craft through footless halls of air. Up, up the long delirious burning blue, I've topped the windswept heights with easy grace, where never lark or even eagle flew. And while with silent lifting mind I've trod the high untrespassed sanctity of space, put out my hand and touched the face of God.
Oh, I have slipped the surly bonds of earth and danced the skies on laughter-silvered wings. Sunward, I have climbed and joined the tumbling mirth of sun-split clouds and done 100 things you have not dreamed of. Wheeled and soared and swung, high in the sunlit silence, hovering there I've chased the shouting wings along and flung my eager craft through footless halls of air. Up, up, the long, delirious, burning blue, I've topped the windswept heights with easy grace, where never lark or even eagle flew. And while the silent, lifting mind I've trod, the high, untrespassed sanctity of space, put out my hand and touched the face of God.